and welcome back to The New Normal. I'm your host, Lisa Davis, aka Litecoin Lisa. Today's a Mighty Monday, so we are going to be discussing something that will be posted on the Mighty Layer. Den.social is in the middle of a migration, so we are doing this a little forwards, backwards, but it gives you an opportunity to be able to watch the show today, be a part of the discussion in the live chat or in the comments, and then go to Den.social and click on the post that will be in the discussion link on this video eventually, and make sure that you let us know your thoughts on the history of the CIA, because lines are getting blurred. Who's a good guy? Who's a bad guy anymore? What did they all learn from each other? We're about to find out from my great friend, I Am for I Am, right after this. Welcome back. I Am. Good to have you.
You caught me.
I caught you. Oh, no.
No,
what were you doing back there?
Here. My FBI handlers don't want me on here because, I know too much and my face is too popular and the wrong people will find me.
Oh,
so
no. I hope
that's why I don't post my real name.
Yeah, I hope everybody finds you. Yeah, we all know who your well, a lot of us know your real name.
So we're going to talk about the NSA and the CIA and so I can't use my real name, and I can't use your real name, Lisa. I mean, your fake name.
Yeah, Lisa. I think Charlie and I were talking about this today at dinner, and he was like, I think it's so great that I Am is doing that show with you. And he's like, what's his real name? And then so we were talking about, he goes, it's so cool. Like, you guys all have these names. I go, yeah, it's like we're all superheroes. We're all like little crypto superheroes. We're little freedom warriors with our made up names, but everyone should.
Well, I've already kind of semi-doxed myself. I Am William, so that's where the IAM comes from.
That's right. That's right.
And my wife's name ends in IAM, so I am for her and she is for me, and that's where the I Am.
Sweet. Yes, I love that. Yeah, I love that. Well, I'm using this as a homeschool session as well. Yeah, so my youngest is going to be watching and taking notes, and he's going to be quizzed later. He's going to have a quiz after this, so get your pencil and paper ready, Cannonball.
Well, wow. So thanks again for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I really enjoy these.
I can get on my soapbox and talk. Here you go, Cameron. What's a soapbox?
Yes, that's a good question. We'll tell them what a soapbox is.
There you go. Well, the reason I did this was I was listening to a video, and it kind of like re-educated myself on some history of the CIA and its early beginnings, and it was just like, well, yeah, of course, that's why I became an agorist, right? Is because I know the history, and it makes you a little distrusting of government. So that's what we're going to talk about. And, corruption and power and crime and all those things make really strange bedfellows.
Mm-hmm.
They say there's no honor among thieves. Well, I think there was some honor that was in this history I'm going to share today. But anyway, back in the day, before the CIA existed, let's go back to WW2, World War II time. It was actually called the OSS, or Office of Strategic Services. And that was our intel agency at the time. And this is an interesting comment too. A lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people didn't think that intelligence agencies needed to exist except during wartime. Makes sense, right?
Well, because the CIA, it's my understanding, is supposed to investigate foreign threats, correct?
That's correct.
And the FBI is more focused on homeland threats, or what you would call it.
Right, exactly. Bingo. And then, and of course, the FBI handles the issues where it crosses state borders. Well, the CIA, was important because it was supposed to be gathering intelligence and doing and analysis work during the war, as well as working on different ways of espionage, or to help the war effort. And I firmly believe that without things like the OSS, probably we wouldn't have won the war. So it was a necessary evil, if you will. But maybe it wasn't quite as evil and became a little bit more evil along the way. And that's what we're going to talk about. So, when after the war ended, well, let's go back. During the war, we had our naval shipyards, and we were building all of these ships, and we were worried that we were going to have some kind of sabotage that was going to happen on these ships when we're building the naval ships for the war. And we had to crank out all kinds of different ships, and they're building them so quick. And it was a unionized docks and all of these things. Well, guess who had the best intel in the docks? None other than the mafia.
Oh.
People like Lucky Luciano. He was actually, his real name was Charles Luciano, Italian family. He was kind of the mobster, if you will, from the Godfather days. From the Godfather movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he was kind of like part of the beginnings of this. But what he did, which was different, was the OSS said, we got to make sure that these ships are being built in the naval yard without saboteurs. And we got to make sure that, these people that are building the ships aren't working for the enemy. And they tried to infiltrate that tight group within the unions and this kind of thing, but they just were unsuccessful. So what do? Hey, Lucky, we need your help. So they cut a deal. The OSS cut a deal with Lucky Luciano to be their intelligence in the shipyards. Well, that deal meant that Lucky then could also kind of smuggle things in quietly or under the noses of authorities, or maybe wink, wink, under the approval of the CIA or the OSS at the time. So it was, I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine. I'm sure it was a deal like that. I don't think Lucky Luciano and the mobsters at the time were like, sure, we'll do this on good faith for the war effort.
I'm sure they might have been. Well, and that's how a lot of FBI informants are created now, is my understanding, is that they got in trouble or have dirt on them or something. And so they say, you know what? You know a little something about some people. We'll let you off on this charge if you give us information over here.
Right.
So that's right. I mean, this game has been going for quite a while.
Yeah. So at that point, that's when the CIA and the mobsters kind of had these handshakes early on. So the OSS later in 1947 is when Truman signed into law the National Security Act that created the CIA. And later, he regrets it. In 1963, he writes an op-ed piece in the Washington Post that says, I regret creating the CIA because they've gone beyond their scope. They've gone beyond their purpose. They've expanded too far. They're involved not just in intelligence and analyst work. They're going into doing other things around the world that are, giving the U.S. a bad reputation. He was very adamant that, essentially saying, I made a mistake. I screwed up. I shouldn't have signed into law the CIA without having a real good oversight. Well, in the very beginning in 1947, what happens is they need a black budget because Congress funds everything, right? So if Congress is funding this stuff, what's going to happen? Congress is going to know what they're funding and may not like what they're doing or their methodology. And some of that methodology is some of that what they learned and rubbed off from Lucky Luciano. So they don't like all that. So they got to have a black budget, and they got to have another source of income, because later the CIA, like Truman says, they've expanded and grown so much. They got their own military. People don't realize that. They have their own military wing. They can fly and be anywhere, anytime, anywhere, almost instantly. It's like they got their own airlines and this kind of thing. Their own military is really what they have. And it's pretty scary. We have no clue what's in this black budget. The black budget started in 47 and it's grown exponentially since then. We don't know how much. We don't know what they're spending on. We can't even look up and say, like, okay, in 1950, what did you spend your black budget money on? Even though that technology is all old and stale and probably declassified.
Mm-hmm.
But in 47, 48, we were worried about the Soviets. Stalin still had a very powerful army, and he wasn't giving up control of Poland and Belarus and Eastern Germany and all this kind of stuff. So he was holding on to them. Well, we were worried about it. So what did we do? We had to fight communism. Ooh, ugly communism. Of course, right? And I hate, now, don't get me wrong. I'm being facetious here. I'm anti-communist too, okay? So, but it's kind of ironic because what did we do in 48 is we go to Italy and we're telling everyone in Congress, or the CIA is saying, hey, they're getting ready to turn communist. We got to stop them. And what did they do is they created riots, they infiltrated the Communist Party over there. They did unspeakable acts in Italy to try to stop communism. And it also propped up the reason for the CIA to exist. CIA's there. It's stopping it before we have to go to war with the communists in Italy and preventing Italy from falling. Okay. So they learned early on, way back in 48, how they had to stop this thing from happening, which later turns out to be pretty much a lie. The Communist Party wasn't polling, there you go, bad polls, right? Wasn't polling that heavily in Italy at the time in 48. But if you were reading all the CIA reports and the analysts and the intelligence reports, you would think that Italy was about ready to fall. But they enlisted groups like, of course, the Vatican and well, where's the Italian mob from in Sicily and all of this other stuff, right? Well, and there's the hands, shaking hands with the devil, essentially making deals with the devil, with the mobsters. But they also needed more money. Now, what we don't have factual evidence, and I can't tell you to turn to this page in this book and here's documents that cite proof, but it's pretty well known, and whistleblowers and other places, that let's call it a conspiracy theory. We went to Chairman Mao during his revolution against Chiang Kai-shek. We support Chiang Kai-shek. We didn't approve of Mao. He was a communist. And Chiang Kai-shek ended up losing. But before he lost, we said, well, we got to cut some deals here with Mao. So we said, send us your poppy fields or the heroin in 48 so we can get some funding for our CIA to fund this fight against communism in Italy.
Now, isn't that when Bush Sr. was involved in the CIA?
Bush Sr. involvement in the CIA came a little bit later.
Okay. I thought that's why they called him Poppy. Papa Bush.
That's a good one.
Because he was involved with the poppy fields.
Fast forward a little bit because we have.
I don't want to jump ahead of your timeline.
No. It's good. Great question. Fast forward ahead a little bit and think of all the Latin American countries and the cocaine and the poppy fields that way. That's where Poppy Bush comes in. Okay. Remember, Poppy Bush was now in the oil field business after fighting as a World War II pilot. So we're still in 1948 real quick. Okay. So what happened was, supposedly the CIA was taking this money from this cocaine and our poppy heroin. It was actually heroin that was coming into the U.S. Someone within the U.S. federal government was saying, how come all this heroin is showing up in all of our cities across the country? Well, lo and behold, it was a CIA deal with the mobsters to bring that over so they could get money. And what did they give Mao was they gave him arms and armaments to fight his revolution. But we were supporting Chiang Kai-shek, not Mao. So it gets really muddy.
Wow.
Now, again, it's all clandestine. Now let's define clandestine. Clandestine means I can hide it, I can keep it stealth, I can keep it, secret, as long as you can't find out the true source. Like the spy, when the spy is caught, oh, I don't work for the such and such government. No, I'm doing this on my own. Clandestine means you can't trace it back to the government. Clandestine, the spy work is gives government or a government agency plausible denial. Oh, he's not with us. We had nothing to do with him. That's what clandestine operations basically mean. So that's why it's hard to pin down and show proof and documents that the CIA has always been in the drug trafficking trade. So it's that's where they the hidden sources, and keeps it cloudy and dark and mystical and conspiratorial.
Yes.
So that's the
Canon, I'm giving you clues with some of the things that I'm posting.
Yeah, clandestine, traceable, hidden sources. Bingo. So anyway, Truman, again, we had little oversight. Cold War bumps up in the 50s and 60s. Lucky Luciano is banished to Italy, poor health, poor guy. Dewey from New York, the governor, who actually was a prosecutor who put him in prison, releases him and sends him to, Italy. And other people join in after him, like I'm drawing a blank here on names here. Let me go to my I apologize.
No, you're good.
Frank Costello, Mayor Linsky, Vito Genovese. I'm butchering the names, but people like Frank Costello. He called himself, what was it? The Prime Minister of the Underworld, and he's cutting deals with the CIA.
Wow.
The Prime Minister of the Underworld is cutting deals with the CIA, and they got casinos in Cuba, right? And they're running a lot of that heroin through Cuba and into the docks. And the docks, remember, the CIA is like, we'll let you do with your thing as long as you tell us who the bad guys are in the union that are messing up our ship builds.
Mm.
And there's a thing where I think it may have been Luciano gets caught, and they got him. The prosecutor, like, he's going to prison for a long time, but he gets a call from Washington from the OSS and says, no, he's one of ours. You got to let him go. And this kind of thing happens over and over and over. So fast forward to the Bush time, the CIA, and all of the ugly stuff that happens there. And the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Prescott Bush Sr.'s father, was involved in a coup to try to take out FDR as president.
Maybe that's what I was. No, because they would call him Papa Bush. So Prescott Bush was involved in
an actual coup.
That's where. Okay.
And so then we have all this stuff happening in Central and South America, right? And all of the poppy fields, and we have Iran Contra, Noriega. Some people are going to remember those names. I remember that. Who was it? Ollie Norris says, I thought it was a great idea, quote unquote. I thought it was a great idea. The great idea was trading arms for Iran and taking the money from cocaine to buy arms to sell to Iran. And that way it bypasses Congress. I thought it was a good idea. I'm trying to support the people to take over, the coup in Iran. Wow. And that was under Reagan. And Casey was the CIA head at the time of Reagan. And there's, cocaine flying like crazy through South Central, America into the U.S. and from Mexico into the U.S. It was this, and so the war on drugs, and this is where fast forward to even today, the war on drugs is such an effing joke, freaking joke. It really is, because it's got the CIA all over it. It's like rubber stamped. And
and what they did with marijuana in the States was just really them legalizing it just allowed trackability and involved the government in it publicly, because then it was all the licensing that had to happen. And so it's just, they can be corrupt like forwards and backwards. You know what I mean? When we
That's
sit
right.
here and think like, well, if the government would just stay out of it, well, I guess that's the only way to get them to not have
Yeah.
government corruption, is have them totally out
Yeah.
of it.
Think about it. We were starting to see a heroin crisis here in 48 in this country. And someone in DC was saying, "Hey, we got a heroin crisis. I want to find out the bottom of this." And what's he run into? He runs into the CIA and Frank Costello and
Right.
Mayor. So then these guys see they're tied into Cuba. And then they're into Cuba and they got all their casinos, and the Castro comes in and throws them all out. They're losing all that money coming through from Cuba. They're running drugs to Cuba, and they lose Cuba. So now they're pissed. And there's your perfect
That was
picture.
our thumbnail for the video today.
Yep. And there you go. JFK, what's he want to do? He wants to take the CIA and shatter it into, break into a million pieces and shatter it and throw it into the wind. He wants to break it up. He's taken out. CIA's all over this one. And maybe or maybe not with the mob. Who knows? I think it's almost pure CIA. And who benefits? Of course, LBJ benefits. But JFK is taken out because of the whole Bay of Pigs. And what did they want? They needed another, way to move the drugs through. So now the drugs are coming through the southern border, not so much through Cuba, because Castro's there. So it's ironic. Castro is a villain, but then Castro slows the flow of drugs from Cuba through the mobsters, usually the Italian mafia at that time. And the Italian mafia was, hey, you can sell to the black neighborhoods, the Chicano neighborhoods, the Mexican neighborhoods, the Puerto Rican neighborhoods. You can sell to any of the white neighborhoods, but you stay out of the Italian neighborhoods. That was their rule.
Really?
And their rule was, if any one of our people in the Italian mafia are selling drugs to us Italians, that you're okay to take them out. It was like a you put on a list, a hit.
Wow.
Crazy.
That was the real war on. That was the only war on drugs.
Yeah. So then you got JFK, and there you go, James Lucid. Oh, I love the name Lucid Dreaming. We'll talk later about that. Okay. Anyway, Alan Dulles over the Warren Commission. There you go. Dulles is fired by JFK, and then later JFK is killed, assassinated, and what happens? Dulles is in charge of the investigation because the Chief Justice Warren of the Supreme Court, he's too busy. He's running the Supreme Court. He can't really do it. He's not even have the prosecutorial investigative history and experience to do the Warren Commission. So that falls on whose shoulders? Alan Dulles. Who's Alan Dulles? Former CIA head. It just stinks. See what I'm talking about? It's ugly bedfellows. The CIA and the mafia and mob cartel kind of teaching each other. And then they just grow and grow and grow and become more and more powerful. Military industrial complex is kicking in high gear during the Cold War. Eisenhower, before Kennedy is elected, is warning us about it. And look at all that we got. And then now think of what we know about back then. What don't we know what's happening now? How big are they now within the government? Are they really, blackmailing and extorting members of Congress? We always say our guy our elected official we send to Washington's good, and then they flip. Well, why'd they flip? It makes you wonder, because
they get blackmail on them. Yeah. That was because that was my understanding. Well, maybe that's the FBI history. We'll have to do an FBI history of one of these too.
Yeah.
Because then you get into all the Hoover stuff, and the guy he's buried by, the love of his life, and the largest porn collection. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah, it's all good stuff.
Yeah.
And we had the drug running going in Laos, Vietnam, Thailand, and Burma. And you're going back to Mao, and if in fact we were, Mao had a rule, and this is kind of how he took out his political enemies as well. He had a rule that even a private in their army, if you were found with, opium, you could be killed, shot on the spot. If you were found using it, you could be killed, shot on the spot. If you were found transporting it, growing it, killed, shot on the spot. So that's how Mao took care of his opium problem. And
that's what Xi told Trump. He said, "Why don't you
Yes.
have a drug problem?" He said,
Yes.
"Drug problem? We don't have a drug problem. Quick trial." So there is some of that.
So, now there you go. I could say, hey, look at here's my drugs right here. I'm going to put them in my neighbor's, because I don't like my neighbor. His dog's barking all the time. I'll look at, private in the army. He's got drugs. Shoot him.
It could be dangerous because there's no going back from that. Or, now they have all these things where people are, freed years later from DNA tests and whatever. I don't know.
It makes sense that we would probably cut a deal towards the end when we knew that Chiang Kai-shek was losing the civil war in China and fleeing to Taiwan. People don't realize that. A lot of people forget that history. That Mao was winning, or Mao was already going to win. Our intelligence was telling our government that, and our intelligence is like, we got to cut a deal with this guy. We got to get a little bit closer and chummier with him. Last thing we want is him to take over, communist country and then become friendly with the Soviet Union, and then we got a bigger mess. So we need to kind of help him win, play both sides. It makes a lot of sense.
But they were playing both sides in a lot of things. Like you were just talking about the Iran-Contra thing, the one before that they were, buying the drugs from one, sending the weapons to the other, which a lot of people are saying that's still happening in Iran. And
so if our government is the CIA and the CIA is our government, and our CIA is interacting with the mafia or different mafias and cartels, and I would say this is the same true with the Mexican cartels today. It's almost like they're one and the same. And that makes me have a lot more distrust in our state, in our government. When I say state, nation state,
right.
And that is why my journey from conservative Republican, libertarian to agorist, that's part of my journey, is knowing that history, and that history is a history that creates more distrust. As more information, facts come out. And then you see things like the 2008 financial crisis, the Patriot Act and the erosion of civil liberties, more lies and more power grab, and the military industrial complex, bloated budgets and black budgets, and we can't audit that. And regulatory capture of industry, like, big pharma and overseeing all this energy policy, and even agriculture. What's that going to lead to? Starvation of our own people. And, the NSA surveillance, Iraqi war wasn't justified, Gulf of Tonkin, incident, which is a false flag. Vietnam was not justified. FDR knew, December 7th, I call is, he knew day, KNEW. He knew that the Japanese were going to strike. He knew day is December 7th. That's what I call it. Some people are going to be offended by that. But all these lies have added up to a point to me as I'm going to use, that's my hat, agorism, counter economics, to try to divorce myself from the system. The less power that the system has, the less power it has over us. The smaller the government, the stronger our rights and privileges are, is my feeling. And you see Operation Paperclip, Operation Mockingbird, and the controls on different elections. God knows what happened in 2020. All of these reasons that I'm stating, and these lies, lead us to that point where we have to say, enough. Hashtag enough. I'm going to start taking my toys. I'm going to go play somewhere else.
Yeah.
Parallel systems.
I agree. I mean, and one of the best ways you can do that is to have your assets in your own possession. And then, you talk about the agorism thing. So spending our time and our energy on things like Den Social and engaging there in communities that we share like-minded ideas or can at least speak freely without being, censored and all this. But that's great. I love it. I love a little history lesson. I think that it's really important. That's one of my favorite use cases for blockchain,
Yes.
is to be able to,
Yeah.
once we have a true history, when it's not rewritten by the winners every time we go through one of these, maybe we'll, I think you and I were talking, I think it was last week. And I was talking about how, in our homeschool song, we talk about the first great awakening and the second great awakening, and that I do believe we're going into the third great awakening. I just hope we stay awake and don't go back to sleep or forget, and think this was all a dream that we were in. So
Great point.
we have to wake up and stay awake. So
Great point.
thank you so much for everything.
Thank you. That was fun.
Yeah, it's always so much fun. Make sure that you guys, if you're watching this now, refresh it. I will make sure to put a link. There is a link in there right now that will take you directly to the Mighty Lair. And if you'll give us just, maybe a day or so, whenever
Remember, it's in beta. It's a live beta. So
the den.social. Yeah. So they're always doing work on it. It's kind of like having a little internal update. So as soon as that gets updated, then we'll have this posted. And you guys can give us your thoughts and ideas in the comments there. And I appreciate you all for joining us.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
That was fun.
Yes.
Take care. See ya.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and secret proceedings. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed.